and this is our plan of attack.
Banks have become an essential threat to our democracy. So consider this justice.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio!
Do you or someone you know suffer from poor circulation, shortness of breath, or chest pains? Are you looking for a more natural solution to help overcome these problems? People tell us that after just a few months taking Extendivite, their doctors have noticed unexplainable improvements in their overall health. For more information, visit heartdrop.com or call 1-877-928-8822.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
And tell them Nighthawk sent you, because if you call this number and tell them Nighthawk sent you, you'll get $5 off your first order at extendivite.com. Thank you. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio. And I'm your host, Janet Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. Our producer is Thomas Becker. And with us today, we have a very special guest, Stephen Bassett. And Stephen's been with us many, many times, but it's been quite a while, about a year. And he is the executive director of Paradigm Research Group, which was founded in 1996 to end a government-imposed embargo on the truth behind the so-called UFO phenomenon. Stephen has spoken to audiences around the world about the implications of formal disclosure by world governments of an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. He has given over 1,000 radio and television interviews, and PRG's advocacy work has been extensively covered by national and international media. And there's a long bio on aquarianradio.com. And I recommend you click through to Paradigm Research Group. That is Stephen's major site. You might have another, but that's the one. You can spend weeks on there studying what Stephen's been doing. He has a huge volume of work that he brings to the world to bring about disclosure. Dr. Sasha Lessin, are you there? Hello.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm indeed here. I'm looking.
Hi.
I'm really looking. Yeah, I'm looking forward to, when it comes down to disclosure of what, and the things I'm really interested in is this stuff about an international corporate conglomerate true? Is there evidence for it? What is the Solar Warden a fiction thing, or is there some evidence for it? Steve, I know you're an evidence guy, so that's what I'd like to know from you.
Okay, so that's a good question. Okay. We'll start with whatever. Hi, Stephen. Welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Hi, Janet. Hi, Sasha. It's nice to be with you again.
We're happy to have you. So we are interested. It's been like a year since we've kind of spoken, and we'd like to know what is happening in your world and what you've learned, because you're always on top of things.
My world, of course, is the politics of disclosure,
mm-hmm.
The disclosure process, And disclosure, to remind everybody for the 40 millionth time, I guess, is the formal the formal acknowledgement of the extraterrestrial presence. It's the government saying there's extraterrestrials here. And by government, of course, I mean the president or the prime minister of all countries, ultimately. But it'll probably start with one country because it's highly unlikely that several countries could come together in a consortium to do this. It would be very difficult. It would probably leak. It would be messy. So one country is going to take the first step. That's what I do. Anything less than that, I'm not succeeding. When we get that announcement, my job, at least this part of the job, is done.
So which country, of course, is it going to be? Trump? Who's going to take over after Trump? Is it going to be China, Russia? In your studies and your analysis at this point in time, the end of 2018.
Yeah,
the current.
Forgive me.
That's okay. We all get those days. Go ahead.
We got heavy rain coming in, and so I'm kind of gooked up. The current political situation has challenged the absolute best of the political analysts, political scientists, pundits, whatever. All they really are in somewhat over their head. It's just extraordinary time, and being wrong has become rather epidemic. Whatever you predict, it's going to be. Predicting is dangerous. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm not saying that they shouldn't try to assess where things are going, but it's been extremely difficult to really follow and keep up. These are unusual times. So the politics of the last 2 years have significantly impacted the disclosure process. It is slowed it down. It has dropped. The amount of media coverage has fallen of the ET issue substantially. I link articles on my media archive site. I've got over almost 11,000. Recently, they're running like 1,900, 800 links, and I haven't changed my criteria that much. And then this year, it's going to be about 300.
Wow.
So the media coverage has fallen, and that's because the media is absorbed by the politics right now. There's not just one political story in the U.S. right now. There's hundreds of them, and they're barely able to keep up. So it's slowed everything down, and that's when you're when you're an activist and you're not rich, you don't want things to slow down. It's a problem. So that's. I don't want to over complain here because the political realities of the last 2 years has affected just about everybody one way or the other. There's been a lot of negatives. A lot of people have lost their careers, their legacies, and so forth. And there's projects and things we should be doing as a country are not happening. So I don't want to over complain. However, there have been some positives. One of the most important developments, which began really all the way back in 2015, but was not formally announced until October of 2017. So it's about 14 months old. Is the coming forward of a group of former military intelligence insiders in a organization constructed for the sole purpose of engaging the extraterrestrial issue, bringing information forward, even doing research on various related aspects of it. And of course, I'm referring to the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, which is CEO'd by a musician named Tom DeLonge. The people behind, or the key team, are virtually all insiders of the military intelligence complex who have held high-level security clearances and substantial careers, and are no longer on, I guess you could say, a regular payroll. There might be some odd contractor there going on, but essentially they've left government employ and are now operating as civilians in this organization. This is probably the most important development in the history of the disclosure movement. And for people to get their arms around this, they have got to go to the website. The To the Stars Academy is enough to get you there. Just Google that. Mm-hmm. I like to call it To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science. I know why they include that, but it's a long name. But it's To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science. Go to you need to read everything on that site. I mean, everything. I mean, if you care about disclosure, if you're curious as to what may be coming, that's what you got to do. So yeah, that is one of the most important good things that's happened in the last few years.
So what have they been doing for the last 14 months since they did that? It was Christmas time. Was that last year or the year before? Were that they showed that video? Was that?
Well, they announced they did a formal announcement and launched the website on October 17. I think the website went up just a few days before. October 17th of 2000. October 11th, rather, of 2017, where they announced the organization, what they intended to do, what their plan was, who they were, and they made it pretty clear that they were going to be bringing some remarkable things forward to the public, and that this information would be coming from the government, meaning it would be information declassified by the government that would come out through them. Now trust me, that's never really happened before. I mean, we've gotten stuff from the government here and then, but oftentimes it was confusing. Sometimes it was disinformation, half real, half false. Witnesses have come forward with information related to their service under the government. But a formal program designed to bring information declassified from the government, implying almost specifically for this purpose, that's never happened. That is a sea change. And there is a reason for this sea change. It's a long story. It's complicated. But I have a pretty good idea of what brought it around, what created this. But it happened. And they announced, in addition to their mission statement and who they were, they announced that they were going to set up a corporation, a public benefit corporation, to raise money to do what they want to do. And they have a large mission statement. If you read the mission statement verbatim, theoretically, there's billions of dollars of potential work there. But obviously, they've got to be funded. These people are not. This is not a hobby, and all of them could be making very substantial money in the private sector. And they did raise about $2 million, I think, between $2 and $2.5 million, something like that, I believe. And that was also happening at that time. And then everybody waited. What's going to happen next? What are they going to do? Obviously, there were high expectations, and their first move was pretty spectacular.
That was in all the news. What paper was that in? It was in the Wall Street Journal? Or what?
No, it was New York Times. Well, the first thing they did was the New York Times was contacted, and they agreed to give selected interviews, to the New York Times about news stories, news that they have, and the New York Times that vetted their information and was satisfied that it was credible. And because the New York Times just doesn't publish anything. The people walk in the door of the New York Times all the time, say, I got a great story, and they say, fine, have a seat. And then they tell them the story, and the New York Times checks it out and goes, this we can't substantiate this, so they don't write it. But in this case, they wrote the stories. Two of them were published on the same day. This will be a historical day, December the 16th of 2017. This day will be referred to in history. And in these two articles, they announced.
So it was a year ago today.
It was. Hello. This is the anniversary of the New York Times articles. I'd forgotten. This is so cool. This is very cool.
Wow, this is cool. Okay.
Right. Now I have those on my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org. You just go to the resources and then the print media archive, and you can easily find the links to this story, or you can Google it up. It's not hard. And a lot of information was released in these two stories. Now, and this is unusual for the New York Times to write a double story like this with the same authors. And the authors were telling as well. As the author of these two articles in the New York Times, and of course on the website, which included graphic, film, video, that kind of stuff, was their staff writer, Helene Cooper, who I met, Leslie Kane, who is an independent journalist, well known to the ET community, of course, has written books, done a documentary, a very important part of this work. And then Ralph Blumenthal was attached to the article. And Ralph Blumenthal is a legendary journalist who worked for the New York Times for, I don't know how long time, 20, 30 years. 2 Pulitzer Prizes. And he's on the article. So this was the New York Times' way of saying, we're not fooling around here, folks. It's serious. Right. And the information that was revealed was astounding. And I'll be happy to run through it for you real quickly.
Just like the key points. Yeah,
the primary article announced that there had been a UFO related investigations program at the Pentagon, run out of the Pentagon between 2007 and 2012. And it was directed by a gentleman by the name of Luis Elizondo. That Elizondo also continued to do what he could after the funding for this program ended in 2012. And eventually he resigned from the Pentagon, or from his job on the Pentagon, to join the To the Stars Academy specifically. That was pretty significant. Nobody knew about this program. It was. I've been in this field for 22 years. I didn't know about it. So that was significant. Then they announced that the program was initiated at the insistence of Harry Reid, who at the time was the Senate Majority Leader. That was pretty significant. And that he agreed to provide the funding, earmarking, that kind of thing, on the down low, right? Just keep it quiet. I'm not saying they set up a USAP. They did not. But it was like, we're going to keep this quiet. But it gets better because the story also reveals that the person who, how would you say, persuaded Harry Reid to make this effort to go to the Pentagon for this purpose was none other than billionaire Robert Bigelow. But he gets better because we learn that some of the $22 million in funding that serviced this program from 2007 to 2012 went to Robert Bigelow for doing research at a facility set up at Bigelow Aerospace in Las Vegas to study materials. And by that, I mean materials that were suspected to be from extraterrestrial craft. And these materials, some of these materials were apparently provided by the government, and some were, harvested from private sources, because some of these things have been around for a while. That was pretty spectacular. All right. So we learned that.
Yeah. I hadn't heard that part before.
Yeah, this is huge. And so Bigelow is now we've learned that Bigelow is connected to the Stars Academy, and was involved in the research. And of course, he has a history with this phenomena that goes back all the way to the 1990s. Robert Bigelow was at the J.Y. Ranch in Jackson. J.Y. Ranch in Jackson, Wyoming, owned by Lawrence Rockefeller, in 1995, when the researchers went up there to discuss the strategy on the Rockefeller Initiative. He was there. He then formed the National Institute of Discovery Sciences, which did a lot of investigation into the ET issue. He's helped fund projects at MUFON. And then around year 2000, he begins a long-term contract with NASA to do hundreds of millions of dollars of research, regular research, and the focus was space habitats, being able to create flexible space habitats, which would be extremely useful, very legitimate, important research. And he is still in that contract, still has that contract, even though he's been connected to the ET issue for 23 years. So that all became apparent from those articles. A lot of people didn't know that. But it gets even better because 5 months before the announcement of the To the Stars Academy, and about 7 months before this article, before we even knew that To the Stars Academy existed, Robert Bigelow went on 60 Minutes in an interview in Vegas. And he was being interviewed by Laura Hogan because the NASA was at that time testing for the first time his flexible habitat technology on the International Space Station. That's a big deal. And so it was time to go talk to Bob Bigelow. And so they sent out and did a segment. You know how 60 Minutes works, 3 20-minute segments. Of course, 60 Minutes is one of the best-known, longest-running, most-watched news show in the world. I'm just mentioning that.
Right.
And so the way this works is that a show like 60 Minutes will send out or contact the person and give them a sense of the questions they're going to be asking. They just don't show up and wing it, right? They don't send the questions, not at the high end in journalism. You don't send the questions in advance, but you let them know the areas that you're going to talk about. And given his very extensive connection to the ET issue, I'm sure they let him know that they would also be asking about that. So he knew he was going to be asked about the ET subject by 60 Minutes on camera. He had plenty of time to decide what he was going to say. And so Laura comes in and they do an interview, and it was probably only a fraction of it gets aired on TV. They do a long interview and decide what they think is important. And they went around his facility. And he showed him around. He talked about his work with NASA and all of that, and a bit of his background and how he made his money. And then at the very end, it's always at the very end, she then pops the ET question on him on 60 Minutes. Right? And I think this was May 27th, I believe.
Yeah, I think
and
I've
she
seen
says,
this on YouTube.
Do you think that, yeah, you can, and I invite everybody to do that. I'll also have it on my site. But he says, do you think are extraterrestrials here? And he says, yes. Period. Yes. And then she says, are you concerned that people might think you're crazy? I don't give a damn. And then she doubles down. She says, do you think we should be looking for extraterrestrials? But I guess they're already here. And he says, yeah. Isn't that amazing? A billionaire with a long-term contract with NASA, hundreds of millions of dollars of his money's gone into that work, says on 60 Minutes there's extraterrestrials here now. That was a massively significant event that could have tripped disclosure in other times, but not in this period. Because, again, we are in a very unusual political period in American history. It is extremely chaotic. And as a result, it was noted, but then they had to move back to the political stories. But it's notable, particularly notable, because Bigelow almost certainly knew that the To the Stars Academy was going to announce themselves on October 11th. And that probably knew that they were going to be providing a story to the New York Times. And the story was going to reveal that he had been doing this research with the To the Stars Academy. And knowing all that, he goes on 60 Minutes and tells the entire world, there's extraterrestrials here right now. So I'm trying to show that this is a really big deal for those that maybe haven't connected these dots yet. Right? Mm-hmm. And then it gets better because there was a second story connected to the Stars Academy that came out in the New York Times that day, a year ago this day, in which they released, for the first time in American history, formally released, in other words, it wasn't leaked, and there may have been an odd leak here or there, but almost the first gun camera footage of a U.S. Military UAP intercept, and put it up on the website, where it then went worldwide, went viral. God knows how many tens of millions of people have seen a clip of this intercept. And they did 3, but the most important one was of the Nimitz event of 2004. Now, let me be really clear about this. And I've said this many times, and I love saying it for those out there that are trying to make up their minds about this. Let me be very, very clear. Every country in the world that has a modern, relative to the time, whether we're talking 1950, 1970, 1980, 2000, whatever, modern Air Force, and you can easily imagine which countries we're talking about, is aware of the extraterrestrial presence. Why? Because when unidentified craft turn up in your airspace, and you're a country with a modern Air Force, you go up to intercept it. You just don't let them fly through. Oh, well, looks like we don't know what the hell that is, but don't worry about it. Let's fly over. You send up planes to intercept it, if necessary, to force that quote, unidentified craft to land. And if it won't land, you shoot it down. This has been going on for 70 years. There's nothing unusual about this. And when you do this, given the potential consequences, right? Say the U.S. was to send up some planes to intercept a craft, and it turned out to be a Russian plane, and they then tried to force it down, and then they ended up shooting it down. This would be an incident that could launch a nuclear war. And for this obvious reason, when you send up these kinds of defensive planes that are not monitoring your airspace, you film it with what are referred to as gun cameras. And the reason they call it that is in the old days, I don't know how they are now, but they were put in what would normally be gun sections, or the gun facility. They put a camera in there. They call them gun cameras. And so these countries have been accumulating gun camera footage, not all of it, obviously, but gun camera footage of UAP intercepts for 70 years. There are tens of thousands of these films in the archives of these countries, and they are absolutely unreachable. You cannot see them. You cannot FOIA them. They have not been released, period, because these governments know that if you started releasing the footage showing these craft from military planes maneuvering in the ways that they can, the truth embargo would collapse. And the truth embargo is the policy of the United States and its allies, China, as well as China and the Soviet Union and Russia. And so on that day, The first gun camera footage ever released in a formal way was released by the Pentagon through Luis Elizondo and put up on a New York Times website, confirming the Nimitz 2004 incident. And it only showed some of it. They didn't just show the whole thing. They showed a clip enough to make the point. The full thing could be released at any time, right? And more importantly than that, one of the key members of the To the Stars Academy, who is their political fellow, and the name is escaping me right now, but I'll get it pretty soon. When the To the Stars Academy was announced that 2 months earlier, this gentleman was the first member of the team to speak in the video that announced the organization. And he proceeded in his presentation to describe the Nimitz event in great detail. And he did everything but call it an extraterrestrial craft. Mm-hmm. He described how it functioned. He described its extraordinary capabilities, how it maneuvered around the planes, how it was capable of hovering over the ocean at 20 feet and shooting straight up to 80,000 feet, and then shoot straight down and stop directly over the ocean again. This was part of the original announcement by Chris Mellon, their National Security Affairs advisor. He couldn't have made it more clear. Anybody that knows anything about technology knows that in 2004, no nation on this planet had anything that could do that.
Right.
Now, we can't prove the negative, but it's common sense. No, we can't do that. And so that was announced. And that, of course, was so we have the gun camera footage, which shows this intercept. It shows the craft. Remember, these F-18 jets have the highest level of technology, both in the visual and in infrared. They have the highest level of tracking cameras, so they can lock onto something and follow it, even if it's moving at great speed. And this was announced, and then eventually 2 other footages were announced. That is what happened 1 year ago today, and it generated a couple of hundred stories, a couple of hundred articles around the world. All of them are linked on my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org. You can go read them all. And many, many interviews, mostly with Luis Elizondo and some others related to the field, like Leslie Kean, like Nick Pope. I have 100 of those video interviews and television news coverages on my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, under issues To the Stars Academy. And you can go watch them all. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you get
so
to
that's the most important thing that's happened in the last 2 years.
So you think this was all leading into this mysterious announcement that Trump has about his space, military branch, the space, whatever he called it, the space.
No, it's not connected.
Forces that he's. So
No.
what is that about? What do you
That's
think
Trump.
that's about? Is there something going on already? Because a lot of people are speculating that there might be something existing already, and in order to not get caught off guard or whatever. I don't know how Trump operates. I don't agree with Trump about everything. But
Trump.
the theory. Yeah, let me just finish this sentence. The theory is there's already this secret space program existing, and a lot of the people are coming forth, like the Corey Goods and the Emery Smiths, and I have 25 secret space program type whistleblowers I've been interviewing for the last year, and so there's something going on. There's all these people, now speaking out, and I've got a couple that are really, really super credible. So that was one of the theories, that there's really something going on. And so when people that like Bigelow knows that are going to Mars, when they land, they're really going to encounter what's really there, and so they'll have a backstory. Oh, yeah, it was there all along. Have you heard that theory in your travels in this group here?
I'm generally aware of all the theories that are relatively on. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm pretty much aware of all of the theories that are getting substantial internet play that are connected to this issue. Mm-hmm. I'm aware of many of the witnesses that have come forward. To get back to your original question, the Space Force was simply another thing that President Trump tossed out. There's nothing really behind it. There's no strategy behind it. And the military is already slowly just working its way out from under it. Same as with the military parade. They basically go, okay, fine, and then they just slowly pull it away. And that's not going to happen. The fact is that there has always been a classified space program. Always. Mm-hmm. And that is no surprise. There is actually an entity that is attached to that program called the Space Command. And yeah, we'd love to know more about what they're doing, and that's all part of the secrecy thing, and so forth and so forth. But without just being neutral on the subject, we have a classified program. We have people that have gone into space, and we don't know that they went. There are people that have gone to space. We don't know their names. There are missions that have been made. We don't know that they even happened. That's always been the case. So there's nothing really new there. And because we've always had a classified program, the idea of setting up a space force is, well, really redundant. But again, there's nothing going to come from that. Trust me. Nothing is going to come from that particular initiative. As far as what is developing around the classified space program, I'll make some careful comments. Okay. One of the good things that's happening, even though the political movement is somewhat stymied, is the interest level in the general public about the ET issue is growing. It's not the lack of the less media coverage that we've seen does not reflect that, but other things are reflecting it. Recently, a film was premiered in Los Angeles on Bob Lazar. 1,600 people packed the theater. There are numerous programs in the works related to this issue in a very serious way. Some are fictional, some are more documentary. In about 3 weeks, History Channel will launch a heavily promoted series called Project Blue Book, which is really about the career of J. Allen Hynek. I assure you, that is not something that would have happened in 1970 or 80 or 90. There are other programs in the works. Tom DeLonge has got a movie deal, I think, already locked up for his book Secret Machines. He's got a series for television. There's another history series that may be connected to the Stars Academy. So this is a sign that the smart people in the entertainment industry have figured out that the interest in this subject is growing very, very rapidly. And as a result, there is now a very expanding audience to hear your story. There is a increasing incentive for people to come forward with stories about this issue and their personal experience. They are generally classified as witnesses. I do not call them whistleblowers. And there is a very good reason for that.
Witnesses. Yeah, witnesses. I like that.
Witnesses. A whistleblower is somebody who comes forward from outside of an organization, governmental or private, and goes public to reveal illegal criminal activity going on within that organization. And by and large, that is not what these witnesses are doing. They are trying to tell you what's going on. Now, it may be in some cases that they actually have broken a law themselves by coming forward. But even if you break a law to come forward to tell the public about something going on that is legal under the law, that doesn't make you a whistleblower. It makes you a witness who's broken the law. And so this is all getting mushed together, and I will do what I can to clarify. And so these witnesses are coming forward, and there is a big audience. And so I'm going to be very frank here, and I don't think it'll surprise anybody. There is a very high incentive. There is not incentive and some benefits for people to come forward and make up really interesting stories about being a witness or part of or involved in this, that, or whatever in the ET issue in general or the secret space program. And no one should be shocked that some of these accounts could be completely bogus. I don't think anybody would be surprised at that. So the task, well, not the task, as things heat up, as the disclosure process advances, particularly starting next year, it's going to pick up again, I think, very intensively. Everybody is on their own to try to make a determination as to who they believe is telling valid stories about events regarding themselves and any secret programs in the U.S. and who is making them up. And possibly who is a disinfo agent. Though I think the disinfo agents there's less of that going on because we've kind of moved beyond that. And by disinfo agent, I mean somebody comes forward and tells you a story that's partially true and partially false, and they're doing it because the government is actually paying them to do that because it's to help keep the lid on the truth embargo. That's still possible. Can't rule it out. So we'll make that the third category. There are people coming forward with completely made-up stories. There are people coming forward with completely legitimate stories. And there may be a few that got a little of both involved. And all I can say is it is not easy to make these determinations. The average person has almost no way to know. All they can do is just sniff it and go, it smells bad, smells good. But really being able to know what is legit and what isn't, even the top researchers in the field, it's not easy. And it's also a problem because if we were to be hyper aggressive in assessing or going after or parsing people coming forward with their stories, meaning that if we think something's not legit, just pound the hell out of them. This is not necessarily a good thing. It could very well discourage other people, legitimate witnesses to important events, from coming forward because nobody wants to be pounded. And so we have to be circumspect and careful. And so this is tricky, very tricky.
Well, let me ask you, can you imagine anything that would constitute proof? Because I've been talking to people like, what would be proof of what they're saying in your mind, besides bringing out an alien and letting it be autopsy, but some kind of proof? Because they're in these secret, behind the closed doors programs, and they're coming out, they're witnesses. What could they possibly bring? I know Bob Lazar had that problem. What could he bring forth? Well, were you in a directory? When you're in these secret programs, you don't even get a paycheck. You're not going to be able to pull out a paycheck stub. You're not going to be able to pull out a directory. You're in a secret program.
I understand.
So we're trying to figure out what is proof. What could they possibly show as proof?
It is very hard. There are different kinds of witnesses. There are witnesses that have been involved in classified work. But classified work dealing with that are known to be taking place. Now, let me give you a very simple example of that. Americans know that we have a nuclear defense. We have a nuclear defense system. We have nuclear weapons. We have bases where those weapons are located, and if we ever need to use them, we will. And no one is shocked to know that people that work on those bases have high classification status and are not allowed to talk about a great deal of what they're doing. Now, is that a secret program? No. Our nuclear defense system is not a secret program. And so when men like Bob Salas and others have come forward to talk about the nuclear tampering incidents, which they're able to establish exactly who they are and that they worked on these bases, and there's more than one. In fact, there's a couple of dozen. That's one kind of witness situation. It's much easier to establish the basics, and then oftentimes there's some news articles related to the event that they're talking about, but those are still witnesses, and because they're dealing with the ET issue, they are not treated properly by the government. The media doesn't take them seriously enough, though they do cover them. They don't get called before hearings at the Congress. So that's one kind of witness. Now there's another kind of witness, and that's what's been pretty popular of late. These are persons that worked in completely secret programs. You don't know it exists. You don't know its name. You don't know what it does. And they emerge, they pop out of this and make various claims. Now, one of the reasons that we do have a problem here, and has to be, is a result of the government's mode of operations. The government does have secret programs. And the level of secrecy may vary, but there is the full black program, which is sometimes referred to as an unacknowledged special access program, but I think there might even be deeper programs than that. The unacknowledged special act, whatever, and nobody knows what's going on. They have these things. And when you're in those programs, you have not only the highest level of security clearances required, as well as access requirements, but the penalties for breaching the secrecy of this program and your classification are severe, very severe. And to put this in perspective, as we know, Edward Snowden dumped millions of documents into the public domain because he was upset with the way the National Security Agency was operating. The National Security Agency is well known. We actually know where the building is, and we know a lot of the programs they're doing. And while we learned some new things, Edward Snowden had to flee to Russia. Okay, the people operating in these full secret programs are in a much more risky, difficult position than Snowden. And so when you're in that zone, you as you say, you really have got to break some major laws to bring anything with you or out from it that could back up your story, whether it's documents. I mean, we're talking life in prison, and if we go back a number of decades, execution certainly possible, maybe even executive action. So people in those programs, and they're there. The idea that they're going to be able to drag a bunch of stuff out with them to show, yeah, I'm legit. Very, very tough. And so there's the dilemma. So anybody that comes forward and says, I was in this program, I did this, that, and everything else, and gee, I wish I had any material evidence for you, but I don't, but you understand, what can you do? It puts the media in an impossible position. How are they going to deal with that person? Wait, are they going to go to the CIA and say, wait a minute, I heard there's a super special secret program. This guy says he's in it. Can you confirm that for us? No. And so essentially, because of the way the government sometimes operates, and particularly with the ultra-secret programs, it makes it very, very convenient for individuals to make up stories. And that's just the way it is. That's the facts. And the job of the media is to deal with that. The job of researchers to deal with it, people like me to deal with it, and the general public. And I feel sorry for the general public, because how the hell they can actually properly deal with this and not be taken for a ride, I don't know. It's just the nature. It's just the way it is. And it isn't going to change until we have disclosure and a great deal of knowledge about the history of this and what the government's doing is finally brought into the public domain.
What about testimonials? We were having like more and more people coming out and testifying, just like you had at your disclosure hearing. But then instead of it being like the general field, this is people talking about these programs, and they're starting to come out in mass. What about that type of
again, as far as I'm concerned, whether you write a book, whether you go on a program, whether you set up a website, whether you even sit down with a journalist and give it in, it's all the same. It's all testimony. It doesn't really matter the way it's done, right? And so what matters is not the venue that they're testifying in. Citizen hearing on disclosure, fine, that was testimony. And because of the nature of the event and the people who were involved and the witnesses that came in, everybody was lending. There was a certain sharing of gravitas there, which is fine. A lone individual just turning up, sitting down with a journalist, obviously, much less substance there, a little harder to know. Gee, what does this mean? But it's all basically the same. It's either true or it's not. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And it's also the case. And this is, again, human nature. It's human nature. Mm-hmm. The more extraordinary the testimony, the more bizarre in some cases, the more attention it gets. I mean, that shouldn't shock anybody. And if it's really got a lot of legs, the more likely that TV will pick up on it. And documentaries would be made. You don't really go very far in the film industry making incredibly boring documentaries about relatively basic, not particularly interesting stuff. That's the way it is. And so again, it's tough, and we're just going to have to muddle through here, do the best we can. So when something like 10, actually it's 9 now because Gary Nolan withdrew, but when 9 very substantial career people working in NASA, Skunk Works, the CIA, the DIA come forward and publicly engage this issue by their name, all their full history can't be known because of all the classified stuff they did, but clearly their career is mentioned. And they address this issue in the way that we've seen with the To the Stars. And I just say, this is not difficult to say that is the real deal. Right? Mm-hmm. And so if people are saying, gee, who do I believe? Who do I believe? I don't know. I'm saying, look, go to the To the Stars Academy website, read everything on there, read all the articles about it, watch all the interviews about it, and I can say with high confidence that you are in the ballpark. You are learning the truth of what's going on, and there's plenty going on there. So that's one I. So can
Steve, what do they want us to know at this time? What's the deal? Are they going to introduce technology that we can all use? Is there what's it leading to?
When you say what do they want to know, who is they? The To the Stars Academy?
To the Stars.
Yeah.
Yes, we're talking about.
What is
and
the
intelligence?
The intelligence community that dictates to these guys? What are they trying to get us to be ready for?
Right. We have 2 minutes before the break, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. I can give you a 2-minute response here. All right. In addition, we have a 2-layer thing here. We have the To the Stars Academy and all of the people there, which you can easily read all about them. And then it is known that there is another group of individuals inside the government still backing them up, providing, I guess you could say, cover. I've heard numbers of like 25, 30, 35. But this isn't some rogue group that just decided, let's just go do this. No. And they couldn't have done it. They have support inside. And so, but who those people are and what their agenda is not known, and they don't talk about that. Their agenda is laid out on the website. They want to bring information to the public. They even want to entertain the public. So some of the stuff they're doing are fiction books. And that's kind of Tom DeLonge's forte, mostly co-written. But then they made it clear they want to do research relevant to this issue, and they lay that out. In other words, they want to be a player in the in the transition that is underway, where we're going to finally get the acknowledgement of the extraterrestrial presence and enter the post-disclosure world. And they're serious about it. They expected to raise a lot of money when they launched, but it didn't work out that way. We'll talk about that on the other side of this.
We'll be back in just about 5 minutes. See you after the commercial break.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
You need some more speed records in this day and age. You need coverage.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping off cameras in your face?
Those root weevils write history.
Many of you know that quote by Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. Well, you can, and Event Horizons will give you those truths. So when you're mad as hell and not going to take it anymore from that memorable CNN network, you'll know just what to do. We will draw you in and become your news addiction at Event Horizons. Join us Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern Time at freedomslips.com. Revolution Radio. Our world team members are Dennis Fetcho, John Ilias, David Dunger, Hyla Cass, MD, Melanie Vrichton, Jim Mars, Paula Harris, John Trallo, Maria Payan, Christopher Husser, DODDS, Jonathan Orchard, and me, your anchor, Dr. Robin Falco.
If you decide not to volunteer, it will not be held against you in any way.
Sounds dangerous.
It is. Very dangerous.
Count me in.
And that's right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
In breaking news, a visiting Syrian diplomat reported today that their population is evolving rapidly and advancing into a fifth-dimensional consciousness. They are seeking peace with all cosmic cultures, which may mean that the Earth will be asked to join the prestigious Galactic Federation of Light Alliances. Please join Debbie West and Michael Hathaway on Lost Knowledge, Saturdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Studio A, for the latest breaking news on the Star Visitors' peaceful contact and the ongoing project of cleansing the Earth.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio!
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
Do you or someone you know suffer from poor circulation, shortness of breath, or chest pains? Are you looking for a more natural solution to help overcome these problems? People tell us that after just a few months taking Extendivite, their doctors have noticed unexplainable improvements in their overall health. For more information, visit heartdrop.com or call 1-877-928-8822.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
And tell them Nighthawk sent you, because if you call this number and tell them Nighthawk sent you, you'll get $5 off your first order at extendivite.com. Thank you. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at revolution.radio. And I'm Janet Kier Lisson, your host with Dr. Sasha Alex Lisson, producer Thomas Becker, and our guest Stephen Bassett. And we're having a very interesting show on disclosure. But before we get back to our program, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to that donation button on Revolution Radio and make a donation. That's how we keep these wonderful shows on air. I hope you're enjoying them. And Thomas, where are we in our fundraising?
We have got 1852 and we still need 998. So please donate.
All right.
We've got one bill due by Wednesday and we need about 200.
All right. Please donate. So, Sasha, before we get back to Stephen, any questions, comments? Yeah, you were talking about, what were you talking about? What's the break?
I was very, very interested in the different, in what it is that the motive behind the disclosure, which is being orchestrated for us. And my guess was it had to do perhaps with the use into the general public of some kind of free energy or something on that order. That's what was my guess, and I wanted Steve to reflect on that a little bit.
It's important to make a distinction between disclosure with a capital D, the event, the announcement. There's an ET presence here, and that's all it is. That's no more than that. And disclosure, post-disclosure, with a small d. We get the announcement, and then what are we going to learn after that announcement? And plenty of people, including myself, are speculating at length about that. You could go on for hours and days discussing it, frankly. The possibilities are endless. What are we going to learn? Are we going, or another question is, are we going to learn anything else? Is it possible the government would say, yes, there's ETs here, now you know, now leave us alone? We got business to attend to, everything is classified, go away. No, they're not going to be able to do that. The interest in this subject is now global. There are billions of people aware of the issue, and their desire to know the truth is now been bottled up for 70 years. Disclosure is going to lead to an information transfer. Now,
right.
A lot of this information may be not particularly important for most people, but all of it will be important to somebody. And some of it is going to be important to everybody. And so we're obviously interested in that most important stuff. And the list of that is, now, I do not know, again, what the To the Stars Academy's plans are for post-disclosure, what kind of information they're going to support getting out or not support, I do not know. You can guess a little bit from their mission statements, the areas they want to get into, the kind of research they want to be doing, but we don't know for sure. All I can do is list the kinds of things that are going to get a lot of attention. Here's one. What technology, what's the most consequential technology that the U.S. or any other country has been able to re-engineer from extraterrestrial vehicles? A subsidiary question would be, have you received any technology from extraterrestrials? Have they actually given you something? Which then gets you in the area of a complex relationship between a government or governments and the ETs, which is really heavy stuff. But let's just focus on crash vehicles. We know they have a propulsion system. We know they have an energy system. What are they? What do you know about them? And have you re-engineered them? This is a pretty big deal, depending upon the answer to that question. Secondly, what is the position of the government with respect to contact, including abductions? What are you going to say about it? What are you prepared to say at this time, meaning very early post-disclosure? This is a really tough one for the governments, particularly the U.S. government.
Right.
Very difficult.
Because they're guilty. They're guilty of abducting
No,
people.
you need
that's
you have to have truth and reconciliation, or they're not going to rat.
I'll get to. I'll mention that. Yeah, let me first add that. Then another question is, have you simulated abductions? Have you taken people in order to try to learn what's going on with them and their ET contact experiences? My labs is what it's sometimes called.
Right. Yeah.
This is another really tough question. And we're just getting started, right?
Mm-hmm.
What has there been formal contact between our government and extraterrestrials? If so, have any formal arrangements taken place? How many ETs are you aware of? Are you aware of their agenda, either by inference or by direct information? And so forth. So these are the kinds of things that are going to come into play very quickly. And it's going to be a very intense engagement between the American people and the American media. And this will be taking place in other countries around the world to more or lesser degree, depending upon the political realities of those countries. Now, as you mentioned, most people are going to be involved in this, and it's going to be a very tough situation for them. And the people there's going to be some anger. There's going to be people wanting to take some heads. So you can expect that very soon after disclosure. I mean, I'm not going to wait long at all. I'm going to immediately publicize a call for formalizing, would have to be by the legislature, Congress, both the Truth and Reconciliation and an amnesty program. Now, I don't expect that kind of thing to come together right away, and there's going to be some time to just sort of adjust to this new world. But we don't want to wait too long. Now, there's a difference between these two programs. Truth and Reconciliation, which is a concept that became famous when South Africa abandoned the apartheid government and tried to take another direction. And the amount of hatred and anger that was there was huge. I think it was far greater than the kind of hatred you would expect to see post-disclosure, to be honest. This is serious stuff. They used Truth and Reconciliation helped to save South Africa from a race war. And in Truth and Reconciliation, it is if you come forward, if you have broken the law in serving your country, or if you have done something which may not have broken the law on the books, but is certainly immoral and unacceptable conduct in normal human affairs, and you come forward and you fully describe what you did, and you're very forthcoming, that you will be reconciled to society. You're not going to be pursued. You're not going to be hounded. You're not going to be pilloried. You're going to be reconciled, live your life. Amnesty is different. Amnesty is for people, and it's tricky. There's so many people in so many different circumstances with respect to this issue, both currently involved in it, previously involved in it, but just in general. Amnesty refers to individuals who were involved in these programs. They have done nothing wrong, and they'd like to come forward. There is some interest on the part of various entities, organizations to come forward. But this amnesty program will assure them that if they come forward, they are not going to face legal jeopardy. It's like giving, and it's not really, it's like giving somebody immunity in a legal case. And they may have done nothing wrong, but you're saying, look, we don't think you've done anything wrong, but we're going to give you immunity just in case, as this comes forward, people can't come after you and say, well, we think something is wrong or whatever. In other words, you're pretty much you're good. That's what amnesty is. And both of these programs are not the same, and they both need to be started relatively soon. And they will help the process of coming forward. And the other thing I'm going to call for is, folks, let's don't spend the rest of this century suing each other. America is one of the most litigious countries or nations ever in the history. If we sue everybody for everything, and there are going to be reasons to. We could have thousands and thousands of lawsuits being filed and being pushed for compensation, whatever the hell. Don't do this. Now, I'm not saying there aren't going to be some lawsuits. I'm not saying there isn't going to be some compensation. I'm simply saying let's try to minimize this as best we can, and legislation may be necessary, because we have a planet to fix, we have a nation to fix, and we have a galaxy to explore. Let's not spend the next 80 years suing each other. So that's another thing I'll be pushing.
Right.
I agree.
And there's people that have died, so that's where people are going to get angry. People who have died that should not have died, and they're going to want to sue and get compensated.
They want some justice. But again, the number of people that have died as a result of the truth embargo in this country is probably not equal to a typical weekend during the apartheid era of South Africa. So it shouldn't be too difficult. It shouldn't be too much. But there will be some compensations, and I think there will be some reconciliation. There's going to be a little bit of that. And I encourage the government to be forthcoming and not to play games and not to just try to say, well, look, if we can wiggle out, we'll try to wiggle out as many as we can and we'll take the hits. No, don't do that. Don't play the numbers game. Meaning, we'll lie about 20 situations, and if we get away with 6, that's better than what. No. Just be forthright about everything that is coming in out that has got to be assessed. Don't lie. Be very forthcoming and transparent.
We need victim support for the those who are harmed and hampered.
Yeah, mostly it'll be their families, though. I mean, there are some people that. Yeah, there are. Yeah, you're right, and it's hard to assess the extent of that until after disclosure. But to give you a classic example, one I use often about this dilemma of compensation, of reconciliation, is this one. And this is theoretical, right? But it's not without foundation. This is a theory that has support. And it's simple. It's very straightforward. Question to the government. Did you re-engineer anti-gravitic propulsion? Answer, yes. When did you have it pretty much able to use? Answer, 1960, 69, 73, whatever. Okay, fine. Okay. 3. Why? All right. You obviously, and was this anti-gravitic propulsion fully classified? Yes. Right. Then you made a decision, therefore, that we had to have a space program. To not have one would have raised suspicions. And the space program obviously could not use that kind of technology, and therefore you allowed the shuttle program to go forward. Very complicated, dangerous method of propulsion. And 14 astronauts died in those shuttles. When there was anti-gravitic craft, it could have taken them into space and do what we need to do without that kind of risk. If the answers to all of that are yes, then that is a real reconciliation compensation problem. And I have said that if I were the government and I was about to disclose, I would have a team of people ready to go. Mm-hmm. And the day after disclosure, or a couple of days after disclosure, I would have those teams showing up at the homes of the nearest relatives of every one of those 14 astronauts. Yeah. And I would be very forthright and let them know that they understand why they could be very upset I might show up with a very large check, just not a settlement, not a non-disclosure, but just use it as a check, just let you know we're serious and we're going to work this out later. I might want to be doing that if the answers to those questions are yes. And these are tough questions, and that is a really tough situation. But I invite people to understand that whatever you want to get angry about, whatever you want to point to, the U.S. has done a lot of terrible stuff in the last 70 years. Believe me, a lot of terrible stuff. We have killed millions of people, including lots of men and women and children. We've deforested land, left behind cancer-causing chemicals. We have done a lot of awful stuff. We're not the only nation, of course, that's done a lot of awful stuff. And frankly, nothing that the U.S. government has done in support of the truth embargo on the ET issue in terms of reprehensibleness holds a candle to the Vietnam War. Not even close. Not even in the ballpark. And so we managed to put that behind us. Well, actually, and frankly, we shouldn't have. We should have done a lot more with respect to that. But let's don't get carried away here. Let's move forward. This was a national security matter from the get-go. It was the most profound circumstance in human history of the modern world. I'm not saying it wasn't profound if some ETs turned up in Egypt 2000 BC. Big deal for the Egyptians, but in terms of the totality of a big deal, no, it doesn't compare to now. This is the most profound event in human history unfolding. This is huge. This is transformative. The world is going to change from the day of disclosure forward and be unrecognizable in not too long a time. And so let's focus on dealing with this transition and as an intelligent and thoughtful way as possible and get the maximum benefits and use this opportunity to reform and fix all the things that we have screwed up in civilization, which is still here, still functioning, has some good points and bad points, but we've screwed a lot up and we're causing huge amount of pain and suffering. We're hurting the planet, destroying the planet in a lot of ways. We had to fix that. And this is an opportunity to take advantage of a game-changing event of unprecedented magnitude and fix stuff. And that's you'll be hearing me talk about that ad nauseum after disclosure.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, see, we've been interviewing all these witnesses. I have at least 25. And the world that they're putting out there is beyond Star Trek. I mean, if what they're saying, or even a small percentage of what they're saying, is true, what is being held from us is a level even beyond Star Trek in technology and civilizations and exploration. So it's mind-boggling. So I always ask them, what kind of proof can you give us? And this fellow that is coming on tomorrow with a mad painter on his show, and I had him once, and I'm going to have him on the 23rd, said, well, I went and I reinvented the technology. He says, we have warp drive up to 9.9, and I know how to do it all. And he's negotiated with NASA to do warp 1, pre-energy technology. And if this is true, it'll be out this, this month, next month. The prototypes, he's right now talking to manufacturers and negotiating 1 million units to be distributed around the world. So I just wanted to give you a little ray of hope, but it could be, who knows? But my mind is blown because people have been saying 2019 something major is going to happen. This might be it, because he was pissed and said, you can't be holding this technology from. And so he negotiated some things with some very powerful extraterrestrials, which is like checkmate. And it's like, now this is coming out, and either the U.S. is going to do it. He's also talking to the Chinese. Somebody's coming out with this, but it's coming out. And then we're basically going to the stars. We are going to be a spacefaring race. So I know you've done a lot of work, and I hope that I don't know what you're going to say. And I'm coming out in the limb, and I'm interviewing these people, but I started out when I was 12 years old as a Trekkie, and it's like I knew that was the potential because I'm a lifelong contact experiencer, and I personally been an underground basis, and I bet on chips. And it's like, please get this out to the world, because we deserve better. We deserve better than living in a repressed society. With all this technology to cure all diseases, and free energy, and nobody starving like the poor kids in Yemen. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The world we're being presented, it's a level 0 civilization. And we can be doing at least a level 2, 3, or 4. It's not all the way up to level 6. Anyway, I'm just laying that out on the table. Go ahead, Steve.
Everything that comes
what
forward,
I just said.
any new information that comes forward, new information, I check it out, look at it, and see what happens. There are many, many threads operating at the same time, all of which is part of the whole disclosure process. It's a very broad-based phenomenon in a sense. It's one of the reasons the truth embargo cannot last too much longer. It's just pressure is coming at it from too many directions. So I'm optimistic that we'll get the disclosure fairly soon. But that disclosure is somewhat subject to the geopolitical developments, unfortunately, but it is. And so you can't be certain. But I'm optimistic that it shouldn't be much longer.
So you talked about the big D disclosure,
Right.
and that's what I'm understanding. And correct me if I'm wrong. That involves some type of world leadership, government, or somebody coming out and saying yes, it's true.
If the announcement doesn't come from a head of state, literally out of the mouth of a head of state, it is not formal disclosure.
Right. So, even hypothetically, I know you've done this. I wonder, you've done this mass analysis coming up with, Hillary and all that previous to the election. It was just brilliant, and I watched you do the presentation, and I watched you in the last year, I think, at another conference. And I always watch you, whoever you're presenting. I gotta go see Stephen, see what he's doing. One of your biggest fans. So now with this current political situation, which is very explosive right now, every day there's something, and we don't know where it's going to be, in 2 weeks from now, let alone, the end of 2019. So it's really impossible to, put out a working, functioning hypothesis of how this is going to unfold. But have you tried to wrap your head around it the way you did with the Hillary situation? Because she was heading that way, but now it's just a mess. Do you have any ideas?
Wrap my head around what specifically?
The current administration, if it coming from the United States, coming from our government. Yeah, the current administration.
The circumstances in the United States are such that the likelihood of the United States being the first disclosure nation has been reduced. Up until the last election, I would have said that the U.S. would have been was the most likely disclosure country. Under the current political situation, until it changes, I don't consider it the first on the list. I consider Russia to be the first on the list, and the most likely disclosure president to be Putin. Now, the U.S. is a close second, but still, it's fallen down in likelihood. So I don't see anything happening until there has been a significant change in the political situation in the U.S.
Right. And so if it were to fall to the next in line, have you tried to wrap your head around that?
Well, you're talking about how a change would take place.
Right.
As I've stated, I published on November the 3rd, rather. I could have published it weeks or months earlier, but I let you wait till the 3rd, and it's on my website. If you go to paradigmresearchgroup.org, you under the Disclosure Wire blog, which is my blog, it's still the top. It's the top posting. And essentially, what I conveyed is that there is a political calculus that can be applied to our current situation. And when you apply that calculus, as is often the case with differential equations, there's multiple solutions. But some of these solutions are better than others, and one stands out, and it is what I expect to happen. And this is based on a cost-benefit analysis regarding the Republican Party and the Republican leadership. They have a very tough choice to make, and because I believe they are neither stupid nor suicidal, they're going to make a choice which is in their best interest, the party's best interest. Because remember, there will be still 200 Republican members of the Congress, the House next year, and 63 members of the Senate. And what happens next is going to have a lot to do with their future. And based on that calculus, I believe what is going to happen is, and I'm just stating what I think is going to happen, right? I'm not lobbying, I'm not pushing in a sense. I'm just stating my assessment, which could be completely wrong. And that is that the current president.
We're getting a lot of static from somebody.
Yeah, we are getting a lot of static. I was wondering if you're feeling it. Yeah. Do you want to recall me? Because I think we just got a bad pass-through on the internet.
I can.
You want it? Let's do it. Let's do a reconnect. And that'll probably.
Yeah, because we have a bad connection. Thanks. Okay. We'll be back.
Well, it wasn't him because it's still there.
Oh,
Janet,
shoot.
I believe
Okay.
it's coming from you.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to go off of this, and I'll connect you to the call on another piece of equipment. So go ahead and call him back. Let me get out on this one here.
He's back.
This is a little better. There is a lot of rain in this area right now. There's been some action, but no thunder. Hopefully this is better.
Janet, she's going to reconnect.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's much better now. Janet was the source of all the static.
Okay, good. All right. So what I've said, and it is still my belief that this is how things are going to unfold, is that the current president will be, how would you say, will agree to resign. And at which point the House and Senate, as per the 25th Amendment, will elect a new vice president. Under a pre-agreement, the new president, the current vice president, will also agree to resign. The House and Senate elected vice president will move up to the presidency, and the House and Senate will elect another vice president. And I believe, and it would be appropriate, that these two individuals, who will be selected carefully, to say the least, will agree not to run for president in 2020. In other words, they simply will take themselves out of consideration. After 2020, this restriction will be lifted. And effective next year, we will have what I refer to as a caretaker government, #caretakergov. And I've actually sent this out to about 200 media outlets. I've published it to my list and all that other stuff. Now, the beauty of this calculation is that there's more winners than losers, and the damage will be minimized, both for the Republican Party, for the Democratic Party, which could easily go over the top, go too far, and the American people. And we'll have a 2-year period, I guess you could say, a cooling off period, where we have two people that have been carefully selected running the executive branch, at the top of the executive branch. And during this period, we can execute some reforms, make some adjustments, correct some of the worst problems that are preventing the election process to proceed, also improve trust in government with the people and so forth, and have then an election in 2020 which is going to be worthy of America's history and the intention of the Constitution and the Founding Father. How much reform gets done in that 2-year caretaker period? Well, that's up to the American people. Now, why would I bother to publish this at all? I am a political activist, but my area is the ET issue. I do not publish, or am I activist for the Democratic Party, Republican Party, or any other organization not dealing with the ET issue. The reason that I put this out there is that is my conviction that this caretaker government situation and status would be ideal for disclosure from the President of the United States at that time. It would be much less partisan. The legacy of it would be shared much more broadly. And obviously, a good deal of the turmoil we're going through would be in our rearview mirror. And we could, I think, deal with it in a much more effectively. Also, remember that the CIA, the Department of Defense, they have basically squeezed some toothpaste out of the tube. The Tooth Stars Academy is out. It ain't going to go away. And now they need to move forward. They have been kind of suspended animation, but there's all kinds of indications they have plans for next year. They're making noises that they have some big things coming. But I believe that these statements are based upon their assessment of what's coming politically, that they have also arrived at the same conclusion that I have. And so they're anticipating this caretaker status next year, and they're going to move aggressively because the toothpaste is out of the tube, and they can't put it back in, and they need to move forward here. And so that means that there is a greater likelihood of cooperation between the Department of Defense and the military intelligence complex and this quote caretaker government.
Janet, you're overpowering him. Can you mute?
Yeah, still got a lot of static.
There's something going. Okay, hold on.
It's probably a cable connection. Usually
I got a new cable ordered. Yeah, I got a new cable ordered. It hasn't come yet. Okay, mute.
So the upshot here is that people, if you got cable, you got cable television or DirecTV, and you got yourself a 50-inch screen or whatever. Believe me, some really amazing things are going to happen in the next few weeks. I mean, you're going to see one of the most extraordinary political events in American history. It's going to be intense. It's going to last for a while, and we've had similar things in the past. And it's going to be gripping, and I hope people watch it and take note of it. I remember the Cuban Missile Crisis that gripped our attention for 18 days or so, and people were in front of their TVs. Well, there's a lot more TVs now, and worldwide, because this will be a worldwide thing. People are going to be watching all over the world as the United States go through this little maneuver that I think is going to take place in order to move out of where we are and to get to a better place. We'll see. But if I'm right, believe me, it'll dominate the news even far more than you're seeing the news dominated now. What you're seeing now is just foreplay. And when I mean that, I mean almost 2 years of foreplay. All kinds of stories are involved, endless coverage. It's ad infinitum. I get it. But what is about to happen is going to be far more intense than that. And so we'll know soon if I'm correct or not. But if my assessment is correct, then very dramatic things could happen next year very quickly with respect to the disclosure process. And for that reason, unless, if I am correct, I see 2019 as a very likely disclosure year. If I'm not correct and the political situation continues and even worsens, then no, I don't see disclosure happening, at least until we get into another place from where we are right now. So there you have it. That's why I published it. That's why I've put it out there, because our current political situation has enormous impact on the disclosure process. And let me be very clear. I consider the announcement of the extraterrestrial presence, the disclosure event, more important than the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. It's more important in the United States. It's more important than any religion. It transcends the human condition. That's how big it is. And so everybody has got their oxes, and they don't want to see them gored, and everybody's got their worldviews, and they've got their picadillos and their concerns. I get it. And they want things to go this way or that way, and they don't like to hear this, they don't want to hear that. I get that too. But again, the issue at hand, disclosure of the extraterrestrial presence, transcends all of that. And I invite people to try to just chill out, go with the flow, pay attention, be prepared to get more involved when it's possible, and it will be post-disclosure. And, and this is really not quite appropriate, but as, oh God, I forget his name. He wrote a very important book. Anyway, don't sweat the small stuff. It's not easy sometimes to not sweat the small stuff, but we're sweating a lot of small stuff right now. We're driving ourselves crazy over every little thing that we can partisanize. And ultimately, we're going to learn pretty soon it's all small stuff. Right. Because, and I have those indicators too, and I'm really rooting for it. So what is the next step? We're going to get through this, whatever's coming out in the news every day, and that'll play out in X amount of time. We don't know if it's going to be done before the end of the year or when the new Congress meets. There's all kinds of stuff going to come down the tube there at us. So, again, which area? On that, Sasha? Okay, can you be more specific? Politically, which affects the disclosure, like who's going to end up running this country, like you said, will affect our disclosure. And then, we've got the people. Oops, here we go. The feedback. So I'm going to shut off. Sasha and Thomas, you can ask questions because I have a very bad connection.
It's one of the questions. I don't know if I'm going through or not. Anyway, is not just the disclosure of the extraterrestrial presence, but the disclosure of non-disclosure in a much more general sense about this secret government that it lacks any kind of public control. I don't know. I'm still on the radio. I get that. That's the big one. Well, we have a secret. We've always had a secret government. We have a intelligence complex. We have a military intelligence complex that has a huge classified component. That's the secret government. But you're asking a very important question. The fact is that the amount of stuff that's been classified and the amount of secret programs we have extend way past just the ET issue. The government has pretty much classified everything it can classify. They probably classified how many rolls of toilet paper are used in the Pentagon. In case it looks like a cover up for theft. It looks like they can steal from it easy. Yeah, and of course there have been abuses of power during the Cold War. There have been abuses of power by the military intelligence complex, lots of them. And without getting into the ET issue at all. And when you get to the abuses of power and a lot of the bad stuff, I mean, they're even less likely or more reluctant, rather, to see that get out than maybe the ET presence. ET presence is a very positive thing. However,
there's no question that the announcement of the extraterrestrial presence and the confirmation that the government has suppressed this information and everything connected to it for 70 years is going to animate people quite a bit. And there's going to be organizations that are going to say, okay, look, let's just rip the Band-Aid off here. Let's don't take 100 years to do this. Let's start revealing what the hell is going on. Let's start acknowledging some of the crimes, some of the abuses of power. Let's have some more truth and reconciliation. It doesn't have to be confined to the ET issue. But let's get it out. Let's start restoring truth in government by, one, acknowledging crimes and abuse of power, reducing the amount of classified and secret world by 90%, making restitution where possible, asking for a little forgiveness if needed. Let's really do some major reforms. And so there is a lot more than just the ET issue that is disclosable. And we'll see how much the American people and the American journalists want to press this. And the disclosure of the ET presence is going to be such a huge weakening in the secrecy wall that we may get a lot more than just ET stuff out in the open. But let me be clear. My job is to get disclosure of the ET issue. All right. My job is not to uncover every dirty secret that the government has in its files. I am focused on the extraterrestrial disclosure event. That is it. After that, I'm going to focus on how much is going to be revealed about the ET history and the government. And I will let others address the rest of it. And there will be plenty of people that will be happy to do that. They're going to step up, I assure you, because there's when you step away from the ET issue, there's almost nothing the government has done that there aren't people that are sort of aware of and they want to deal with it. So there'll be plenty of that. But my focus is on this. And in general, I'm interested in seeing reform and not how many people can be put in jail. We do not put enough top people in jail. There's no question about it. Most countries do not, so there's been a little bit of a trend there. Everybody at the highest end are getting a pass. The richest, the most powerful, and top officials, almost nothing they can do that actually puts them in jail. And because of that, we're encouraging other people to continue to do stupid stuff. You put a few really top people in jail, and you may clean things up pretty quickly. But right now, the assumption is if I'm rich enough and I'm powerful enough, I'm not going to jail. I'm going to be fine. And that's where we're at. That's not a good place to be. So that needs to be dealt with. But the idea that we're going to just roto-till our way through the entire government and locking up thousands of people for all this stuff, this isn't going to work. We need to know the truth. And we need to know the truth about a lot of things in order to get trust in government up to a level that's functional. Right now, it's not functional. And we're not going to get the truth if everybody in government is thinking they're going to federal prison if they cooperate or come forward. So we've got to make it safe as possible for as many people as possible to be cooperative and bringing an end, or not an end, but to reforming and reducing the national security state that we created because we built all those friggin' nuclear bombs. I mean, we just couldn't help ourselves. We cracked open the atom. We knew how to make a bomb. And we said, well, now that we can make one, let's make 25, 30, 50, 60,000 of them. This was not the smartest thing the human race has ever done. I wish we could go back and do that over. I happen to believe the ETs are here for a number of reasons, and the most important one is that we actually made those bombs and then dropped them. But we did. And that created an existential global situation that helped guarantee massive national security states in Russia, Soviet Union, China, America, UK, pretty much, Europe. massive secrecy, massive intelligence operations. Okay, great. Now we'd like to get rid of the nuclear weapons. Okay, fine, but they're still around, partially because all these national security states are still around. And so we are on the brink of one of the most important decisions we're going to make as a civilization. And this gets back to something I said at Alien Con Pasadena, I think it was. It was Architects of the New Paradigm conference up in Ashland, Oregon, Jordan Peace's thing. I said to the audience, I said, "There's something you should know. I'm not who I seem. I'm not quite the person you think I am." And then I elaborated by saying this. Yeah, I'm an exopolitical activist, a disclosure activist. And that is true. But behind that, central, even as genesis to that, I am a anti-war activist.
Oh.
And always have been. Now, there are a lot of anti-war activists out there. And you see their activities from time to time. There aren't enough. And they haven't been successful enough. That's for damn sure. But they're out there. And there's all kinds of plans and things and demonstrations and what have you. And efforts to try to change government in such a way that there's going to be less war, certainly on our part, and support international efforts to minimize war elsewhere. They're out there. Okay, I'm not doing that. They don't need me. There's plenty of them. There are very, very few people that are directly engaging the disclosure situation, the disclosure issue. So that's what I do. But I do it not because I'm just in love with extraterrestrials, or it's just I'm a sci-fi fanatic or something. No, I do it because I believe, and always have believed, that ending this truth embargo and announcing the extraterrestrial presence and then beginning to bring the information out is the best shot we have and may ever have to bringing an end to war on this planet. We cannot continue to war on this planet. Movie after movie after movie after movie has been telling us that. Apocalyptic movies are everywhere because the artists and the writers and the directors and the producers and pretty much everybody in this country know that we are dancing on the edge of the volcano, and it's only a matter of time before we fall in. And war continues unabated. The U.S. is well involved. Our moral authority to push back is almost completely gone. And so something's going to go. It's only going to happen. The ETs, I think, are here for that specific reason. They know that we're dancing on the volcano, and they decided it was time to show up because apparently we're worth keeping around. We're worth continuing forward. And so I anticipate, and this is where things get really cool, that disclosure is just the door to open contact. And open contact will follow quickly. It will not take long. So we make the announcement 2 years, maybe less, open contact is going to take place. And in the context of open contact, that is when the issue of, are we going to continue to be a warring civilization, killing each other in mass numbers, or are we going to simply stop because there are much cooler things to get involved in now? There's a much bigger arena. And that decision will be made, if it happens, it will be made after open contact. And I don't think it's going to happen right after disclosure. That's for damn sure. After open contact, the period between disclosure and open contact, we will certainly be discussing this in great detail. And there'll be a lot of very smart people that are going to consider the various paths forward. And then open contact will come, and those people will step out, and we'll really start to get down to a simple discussion. Are you one of the people in China who think that if you get big and strong enough, that one day the whole planet's going to be Chinese? Are you somebody in the Muslim world that think that if you just keep doing what you're doing, one day the entire world will be Muslim? Or are you an American who thinks that when it comes down to it, eventually we're just going to have to nuke the hell out of everybody so that we can still be number one? Or are you going to think differently? Are you going to continue 10,000 years of war? That's what the human race has been. Or are you going to stop it? That doesn't mean that everything is perfect. Doesn't mean the world becomes a paradise. We got plenty of problems. But we're spending over $1 trillion a year on war and defense and military, somewhere in the range of about $1.4 trillion. That's been going on for decades. The total amount spent on war since the, adjusted for 2018 dollars since 1955, it could be $35 trillion. All of that could have been spent on infrastructure, health, food, clothing, housing, whatever, solving problems, great technology, space programs. We spent, I don't know, I need to get this number. I'm going to work this number up, but I'm going to guess it's around 30 trillion.
Yes.
We spent it on war, bombs, weapons, intelligence, secrecy. We basically threw it down the toilet. Now,
we have
that's
1 minute left, Steve. We have 1 minute left, and then I want to talk to you after you get off the air. 1 minute left.
Yeah. And so yeah, I'm an anti-war activist. And disclosure is about getting to the end of war in this country.
Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us. You have been listening to The Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio. Aloha.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free. But there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver Eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Take a look around, kid. What do you see? Homes being foreclosed. People working 2-3 jobs just to put food on the table and still drowning in debt. Don't get me wrong. This country is founded on great ideals and principles. They've all been ruined by the banks. Open your eyes to banks that are robbing you. You know who my favorite president was? Who? Thomas Jefferson. Because he saw all of this coming and tried to stop it. He fought the banks. JFK too, and they killed him for it. The banking institution. Constitution is more dangerous than an army, he said. He also said that every generation needs a revolution, Jimmy. The American dream is just that. Just a dream. War is a continuation of politics, only by other means. Politics is a continuation of economics by other means. This is our bank. This is our war.